You ever feel that deep pull to the land, to know it, to build something that lasts, that itch for your own wild country? Well, it ain't just a daydream. In 2025, it matters more than ever. Whether you're a lifelong hunter or just starting out, dreaming of land to explore, to leave something real, or there is a trailhead where you can start. It's called land.com, the biggest online network for rural property. Find the right agent and explore everything from timber tracts to ranches. Get the tools you need to buy that dream generational property. Stop dreaming about it and head to land.com. It's your place to find your open space.
From coast to coast, unlock adventure at Red Lion Hotels by Sonesta, where restful sleep, friendly service, and local knowledge await. Whether for business or pleasure, spend less and make more of every trip. When you sign up for the Sonesta Travel Pass, you'll get their best rates instantly. Go to Sonesta.com to book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Good morning, everybody. Corey Hughes Bloody History. So, today we're going to pick up right where we left off. We are going to continue on with this Garrison-Sprague document. If you guys haven't yet, go check out independentmediatoken.com. We launched our token a couple days ago, and it's off to a good start. But we look to fund multiple independent media projects through this. So independentmediatoken.com, go check it out. If you have any questions, you can shoot me a message on Telegram or an email. And that's the only sponsor for today, I guess. Since I launched a project, I guess I have to sponsor my own show with it. But, all right, so let's get down to business. We're going to continue from right where we left off. Roger Craig would probably make a good witness. If you think through the thing, you can think a whole lot. Garrison says, the thing to do first would be to start some other investigative structure if possible. It would serve another function if its existence became solid. One of our problems as we go along is that being the last investigation decreases our chances for survival. In other words, as it stands now, they can remove us from office or remove me. Well, then that's the end of any inquiry, but there's another one going. If there's just one more going that is all effective, like in Washington, then I'm not the only one in the world. They'll take the pressure off of you too. Garrison said, yeah, because there's no question about it. This organization, it's several $1 billion a year, if not 3 or 4. And they are not going to put up with this bullshit permanently. And they all laugh. So I think that would be a very important proposition to our surviving if another investigation came into existence. If we can get the money, we'll try it. That would be a good idea. Another one in Washington or some area like that. Washington's a good place for it because you've got the press already there and at least some knowledgeable people. A roadshow wouldn't be the best place, of course, would be Dallas, but I'll be damned if I'm going to conduct it in Dallas and everyone laughs. Dallas is one of the worst places. I wouldn't go down there and conduct it for $1 million, so help me. They got you monitored from the time you come into town. They know more about you by the time you get there than anything you can find out. I think it's a good idea. It should help us survive longer in this situation. Meanwhile, I think I can deliver a message that continual injections of funds into your investigation, confidential, no name revealed, would certainly still be useful, wouldn't you say? Certainly would. We have an endless budget problem, naturally. I can't go publicly, and I don't know how they did it, but the citizens group in New Orleans disappeared completely, and I think they found indirect ways to take care of every one of them, so that if you went to them, there wasn't any specific pressure. All of a sudden, one day, they came and didn't meet anymore. They were chided out of it. How do you suppose that was it? I think they were embarrassed of it. The establishment reasoning, you don't want to get mixed up in something like that. The press harassed them too. Truth or consequences. Yeah, all of a sudden they didn't meet anymore, and all of a sudden there weren't any funds anymore. I think we can do the same thing to government in reverse if we have a little luck. Their situation really is impossible if we can just communicate. It's indefensible. However, himself, none of them can survive daylight in this thing. That's why they're doing so much killing, so countermeasures. If there's another organization available and some money available, it might make a big difference. Well, then she mentioned specifically Americans for Democratic Action is considering a resolution. Are they still effective at all? I thought they had their day pretty much faded. It has. I think Mark Raskin's new group, which is really a third party or the fourth party or whatever they call it, has replaced the ADA and the liberal flank of the Democratic Party. That's where these people come from. You can't expect any money from the establishment, whether it's Republican money or Democrat money, because the establishment is rather monolithic with respect to this thing. So if you're going to go get any money, it's going to have to come from either the very far right, where we don't really have much hope of getting any, or from some relative left, where we do some hope. The only people, that's right, the new left and the very conservatives are the only ones that are interested. And for exactly opposite reasons. Each thinks that they're going to be able to blame the other one for all the killing, and we don't know. They have as much as told us on hard right that if Jim would jump up and say that he's wrong, he was just honestly mistaken, that it was communists who did it, funds would be. I would be on a ticket as a vice president with Hubert Humphrey. That's from the frying pan into the fire. You know, it's almost a comedy when you see the supposed presidential race and each one of them is trying as hard as he can to speak differently from the other, and they can't find any way to speak differently. They talk about the same war. There's a slight bit of difference. Nixon speaks in more specific terms about rebuilding NATO, and everyone laughs. Jim, could you digress for a few minutes and tell me what the federal government has done specifically to impede your... I'd rather pick that up tomorrow or Monday because my mind is too tired to go into fresh areas. In other words, what's Barney Conrad doing, Dick? Anything? He's been over in Spain for the last 2 weeks, but before he left, he finished the first half-hour program, half-hour movie 8. This fellow, Barnaby Conrad, Jim, I don't think we talked about this guy, a book writer and a bullfighter. He invented the technique of using still pictures to look like you're looking at a movie by zeroing in, and he did a TV show on Leonardo da Vinci a couple years ago, which apparently was a big hit, in which he introduced the technique. Well, the guy McClellan, who owns KLIF Radio in Dallas, formerly with Naval Intelligence, approached Barnaby Conrad sometime this spring and told him that he wanted to do a 2.5-hour documentaries on assassins, starting with radio tapes that he has from the radio station and adding to this movies and still pictures, you know, the Conrad technique. First half hour would be pure documentary covering what happened. The second would be an analysis of it, arriving at the conclusion that there'd been a conspiracy. Now, I don't know, communist or what. McClendon is funny, you know. He gives these editorials on his network of stations. The one the other day was that you shouldn't be generalizing about the oil industry being involved without evidence, but by the same token, you should be allowed to bring Shaw to trial and to pursue your case. That seems odd. I think that's because he hopes it was some left-wing conspiracy, and he's convinced that it was, apparently, according to Conrad. Anyway, Conrad came to see me, and he spent the whole day. I loaned him some of my pictures. He's made the first half hour, but he hasn't made the second half hour yet, and he realizes it will take a long time to do that. But the first half hour he's already made, and he's been trying to sell it to television stations in San Francisco, but I don't think he sold it yet. I'll tell you where this fella stands. McClendon, this guy is... There are too many intersections. He's a friend of Jack Ruby's. He's connected with the Murkinsons. He has freaky sex parties out on his ranch. He's come up too quick out of nowhere, meaning that he's either backed by the Murkinsons from a disc jockey or radio announcer to a magnet with now a bunch of stations. He's a close friend of this guy in Los Angeles, Roy Lofton. Roy Lofton just fell into place. The reason Roy Lofton has so much money is that he handles all of the controlled environment air conditioning, places like Cape Kennedy, Vietnam, and so forth. And all he does really is write letters, and he's connected with the Murkinsons and Gordon McClendon and Bobby Baker. So McClendon is part of the crowd, capital T and C. Boxley says, NSRP is the overt operation of this bunch. Theirs is the money that keeps the NSRP going. Yeah, in other words, it doesn't cost him. So he pays Barnaby Conrad to do films on the other side. That's all right. To prove that he's not one of them. Do anything he wants, in other words, as long as they can own the government. What difference does it matter what the subject of the film is? There wouldn't be any connections between his radio stations and McIntyre's, would there? No, I don't think so. No, he's strictly commercial broadcasting, no religious overtones, pop music, and light classics. Garrison said, I think the man ought to go ahead with it, but I just wouldn't count on it too much. But the important, for example, one of Jack Ruby's last letters, Ruby's letters almost have one thing in it, and that is Johnson knew about it beforehand. Now, that's very important because it explains why they went to such great lengths to have him found insane. Nobody writes me more regularly than Melvin Belli. Nobody works harder for the establishment now than Melvin Belli. Now makes, in that respect, makes his role for the establishment clear. I don't answer his letters anymore, so now he wants to take a trip to Canada with him. And I mentioned to somebody, they said they're going to glue reindeer antlers on my head, and everyone laughs. And he sent me out the words, but the long chatty letters from Melvin Belli. The point is, you see part of this structure there. That's why they went out of his way to make the acquaintance. I mean, who am I? And here's Belli, $1 million a year, suddenly writing me. Now to go back to Ruby. Ruby's finally trying to tell the truth. He realizes he's trapped now. They used him. So who does he write letters to? He writes Gordon McClendon. What happened to it? Has anybody heard from McClendon about it? Nothing. He says his two best friends that he can trust above anybody else is Gordon and Joe Cody. They helped him in the deal. Who were these two? Cody and Gordon McClendon. Gordon McClendon is former office. In the war, he was ONI. His sister talks about, oh yeah, Gordon was one of Jack's best friends, and Jack called him that afternoon. The afternoon being Saturday at my apartment. Eva Grant said that. Yep. Has anybody really checked on her? Looks like she's a narcotics addict and a real hard-boiled. Other than that, she showed up at San Antonio, didn't she, where the president was? Well, that's fuzzy. That's fuzzy, yeah. That window was open in your earlier shot. Now it's closed, and this one's opened a bit. There's two conversations going. Another sister of Ruby's works for the Treasury Department. Really? In Washington. That's interesting. Mrs. Norman Carroll. Mrs. Norman Carroll is the name of Jack Ruby's sister who works for the Treasury Department. Carroll is another name Jack Lawrence has, come to think of it. He's one of these people who has an extra middle name, and Carroll is one of them, meaning he could be Carroll. Carroll is used as a nom de plume by somebody else, too. Who uses the name Vince Carroll in this case? It doesn't come to me. Carroll is used by several people in this case. One of them might be related to the Carroll that works in the Treasury. Warren Carroll got killed. No, he didn't either. Warren Carroll was a scriptwriter for Hunt, a former CIA type. Vince Carroll. That will come to me. Hunt and all of his people. Carroll was the name used by Vaganoff when he came down from Philadelphia. He moved on Sunset Street right behind the Texas Theater, and he's part of the operation in some way because he's got to be U.S. intelligence. He comes down here loaded with guns, and he's living right there in Oak Park. He's the guy with the whip antenna on his car, the whole damn thing. Yeah, the radio specialist, and his history is he's been taken by the Germans when they come back from the Russians, and he's grows up as a Nazi, and here he is suddenly bumming around with a big red convertible. But Carroll is the name he used. Didn't Salandria do a lot on him? Reach any conclusions? I don't think they reached any conclusions for this reason. At that time, there was no other inquiry, so there was no place to connect their results. But I would say now that conclusions they reach just connects with the general intelligence operation that we've come up. Don't you think so, Bill? It's just part of the apparatus. I think he may have something to do with the Tippett bit. He was out at that time. Yes, and the girlfriend he married or brought down here or something knows about it too. I forgot what her name was. Speaking of the Tippett death, you ever hear any more about the guy who wrote Playboy magazine after your interview and said he'd been at the scene of the Tippett shooting and had seen two guys shoot Tippett and run away in opposite directions? Remember that letter to the editor? Ooh! That sounds like an awesome letter. I'd like to see that letter. If anybody happens to want to go digging through some 1967 Playboys. No, that's good, but he said he didn't want to say anything because he didn't want to get involved. He's living in New York somewhere. Did you ever get any more? No, he didn't get involved. He said there were 6 other people there who saw the same thing. Frank Wright, Clemens, I wouldn't be surprised. But the 2 men running in opposite directions fits Frank Wright or Clemens. I can't remember. But if one person saw that, then it probably happened because all the others could just see one honestly. This would collaborate, or what he meant was corroborate what happened. What do you expect Alan Wright to tell us tomorrow if we get a hold of his wife? I couldn't see where he really knew anything about the case. Bill seems to have extracted a few things from Alan Wright. I found him kind of useless, but Bill got a few things. The only things I come up with, that if there's this hired guy from Mexico City, which this group could use, and he checked into the Stoneleigh Hotel in Dallas on the 19th, and he turns out to be, we know his name, he turns out to be Frenchy. But that's about it. But otherwise, I think he's, let me reread that. The only thing I can come up with, if there was this hired gun from Mexico City, which this group could use, and he checked into the Stoneleigh Hotel in Dallas on the 19th, and he turns out to be. So we know his name. He turns out to be Frenchy. Okay, so they're assuming Frenchy's from Mexico City because of his darker complexion, but no, he's a fucking Italian.
You ever feel that deep pull to the land, to know it, to build something that lasts, that itch for your own wild country? Well, it ain't just a daydream. In 2025, it matters more than ever. Whether you're a lifelong hunter or just starting out, dreaming of land to explore, to leave something real, or there is a trailhead where you can start. It's called land.com, the biggest online network for rural property. Find the right agent and explore everything from timber tracks to ranches. Get the tools you need to buy that dream generational property. Stop dreaming about it and head to land.com. It's your place to find your open space.
From coast to coast, unlock adventure at Red Lion Hotels by Sonesta, where restful sleep, friendly service, and local knowledge await. Whether for business or pleasure, spend less and make more of every trip. When you sign up for the Sonesta Travel Pass, you'll get their best rates instantly. Go to sonesta.com to book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Vincent Calderon Jr. is Italian, not fucking Mexican. And how do they know that he stayed at this hotel? And if they know that he stayed there, why don't they have a name? But that's about it. But otherwise, I think he's... What about the Dorseps morsel part of it? Oh, that's too remote to do anything with. Except Morrison's killed and Hugh Ward is killed with him under rather odd circumstances. But what can you expect except to say another part of the Bannister operation is gone? Gee, the mortality rate in the Bannister operation is pretty heavy. Unbelievable. Heavy and close together. Ferrie and Hugh Ward and Bannister. Who else? Gatlin. But Gatlin had a heart attack. Yeah, after he fell 6 stories, and everyone laughs. Can anybody identify a crippled pilot that got killed? Can anybody identify a pilot whose name was Barney? I have 2 pilots. I can't get any names on them. Isn't that the guy who was supposed to have flown the plane and disappeared off the coast of Corpus Christi? May have been. I've checked with the FAA, the CAB, and everybody until I'm blue in the face and there wasn't such plane. Did anybody check the papers? We haven't been. Neither have I. We don't have the resources. We get good leads and don't follow them up. I figured that the FAA eventually would come up with some information, but they won't. I think the excuse is that they will hide behind if they actually get enough of this, that it fell outside of their territorial waters. Therefore, it wasn't in their jurisdiction. Therefore, they don't have any records on it. If somebody could get to Corpus soon, before it gets around too much, they might find it in the microfilms of the paper. But I've seen cases like this in Dallas Times-Herald, I believe, where microfilms have been taken out of the library. It just occurred to me that a plane isn't going to plunge and kill a couple of people without it being in the papers. Do we really have any solid evidence that there was such a plane, though? I think it unlikely, personally. It seems to lead that I put way down on my list. I would consider it a low priority. Grossiers is good in the fact that his living with Ferrie and his relationships. Oh, he's talking about brochures. Remember, this is like a transcription, so the person transcribing it didn't get everything right. Brochures is good in the facts of his living with Ferrie and relationships with individuals. He had sexual relationships with Thornley, for example. Well, I believe him. That's why he describes so specifically the body holding the gun and militant. He says he's positive that it's Carrie. Do you know who his uncle is? Whose uncle? Brochures. Melvin Price, a longtime congressman from East St. Louis. Oh, really? He's a curious person because you find it hard to believe that a man feels so strong about the truth, and yet it seems to be a thing with him. He seems to be genuinely concerned about it. He picked up things that are rumors or Ferrie might have told him, which weren't true about the plane, but tells the individual that he saw, I think it's reliable. Wouldn't he make a great witness? They've already shot him out. They've already shot him out of the saddle, but as a witness, the federal court sent him to an institution. You mean he's there now? No, but they said it's on his record now. I don't care. Practically everybody I have is going to some sort of record of that type. He's a fairly colorful character. I think he could be very credible. One thing I have to do is spend half the time building up credibility. Who the hell is going to be living with Ferrie? He's going to be a rather odd character to begin with. That's one thing about it. They can't discredit the witnesses as easily by sending him off an institution, because that's going to make it all the more believable that he would be living with David Ferrie. No problem there. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with James Earl Ray. He may die of a mental imbalance, I suppose. then you will have a closed coffin. Won't that be amazing? It's too gruesome to let people look at that, folks, especially when he turns purple. They may have a state legislature pass law where you can't get a look at the autopsy. It isn't that unbelievable? They just did it in California. These things go through just like that. At some juncture, we're going to file a suit against the federal government, some sort of stuff in the archives under the Freedom of Information Act to see if we can shake some of them loose. I think they are set up for most of that stuff where they'll say, okay, here it is, and there won't be much there. The main thing to head for is the x-ray. That's the toughest thing for them to handle. In other words, I think, for example, the really highest category of classification has never been mentioned. It's buried forever in FBI files. It's not buried in 10 feet of ground. Never reached the archives. And all right, and then it cuts off and it starts the next side of the tape. So we'll start on beginning of side number 9. Damn, it's a lot of reels. Boxley says, Isaac's Ferrie is from the New Orleans area, and the agency is from New Orleans, and that agency did run a name check on Oswald. By gosh, they did. Yeah, and they were also regular contributors at the Citizens Committee. Oh, really? Truth or consequences? Sure, that doesn't mean a thing. Gordon McClendon, if he lived in New Orleans, would have made every meeting, wouldn't he? Jack Ruby. Hell, I'm one of the foundations that the CIA gets money to help finance me, to throw me off the wrong trail. That wouldn't surprise me at all. The thing to do to use it, that's all. If they come up with money, I'll use it. Now, how did Ferrie use the Isaac? He said he was surprised to see a guy of Isaac's caliber taking up with a nut like Oswald. I was surprised about that comment because it's hard to me to think that Ferrie would view Oswald as a nut. Ferrie didn't say that. The other guy did. Yeah, well, maybe it was. That might be different. You say the guy had a hearing aid or a hearing device in his ear. Either one, he has a plug in his ear, just like the police officer in that picture. Did you see my blow-up? I think that blow-up is terrific. That's something Dallas was not using at the time, man-to-man communications. They'll catch on to that about 1990. Wait a minute, what did he say? He said, there's something Dallas was not using at the time, man-to-man communications. They'll catch on to that about 1990. Oh, that's funny. He's just mocking fucking Dallas Police Department. Boxy says, that's direct control of Dealey Plaza. That's all it could be. Does anybody have any idea who the 3 bones were? Well, we don't know who the police officer is, do we? Hartness is the guy in the back. Yeah, but who is this guy? Boy, if we knew who he was, we'd have it. You can almost see the name on his badge. It would be a phony anyway. Probably one he's rented. Probably it says unidentified. He's got loafers. Loafers, he sure has. How's that possible? Did you see this? I've never seen a police officer with loafers in my life. Okay, so what he's talking about is talking about the picture of the 3 tramps where there's like there's like an officer in front, there's like Bass or Wise, and then there's another unidentified officer who's far in the back. But his uniform is super fucking baggy. Like it's not a proper fitting uniform whatsoever. And they're saying the guy's wearing loafers, which you don't wear as a cop. You got to wear boots. So, yeah. There was a fake cop in that picture. It's another mystery I've never been able to figure out. He ain't no police officer. What's this thing in his ear? I see something in it, but I can't quite make out the form. Here's the shadow he's casting and the sun comes out here. Got a wire going down under his collar. Has anyone been able to see these 3 bums? No, they only speak of one bum, and they cloud it by jumping on the group investigator you see. Everything you encounter, one bum. Lonnie or whatever his name is. If you see it, it's a way of getting out of mentioning these 2. No, David Bellin is talking to police officer Harkness, and Harkness said there were 3 of them. Bums, though. Could one of them be Bradley or not? Yeah, I'd swear that's Bradley. This is a beauty. I think 2 of them, anyway, are the guns of operation. Yeah, no, he got it wrong. Maybe one of them, Danny Green, but they didn't identify Danny Green. This looks like one of those paramilitary types, the kid who had been in the special services or something like that. Fensterwald says something and it's redacted. Weird. Boxley says the shooters were taken out under police escort. Here's the guy getting them to the jail and from the jail, and they sent them to a police car out back door. Tippets say they are gone. Central Intelligence had some fantastic data in this summary of theirs, and we've got to keep that in mind. I almost let it go, but after I called to the guy who assembled it. But what they do to this, in other words, they rely on a lot of U.S. money, and some of their sources of their information is from the CIA itself. The data about the shooting they indicated to us came from the Central Intelligence Agency, another part of it. And who else would know better when you think about it? It was shop talk. the details, how it was done, I'm inclined to give a lot of credence. In other words, through one of their guys they planted inside. No. They just told how it was done off the record. One of the guys who wasn't involved but knew how the agency had done it explained how it was done off the record to French intelligence, and French intelligence reported it. And it was recently put in book form, put together, I think, as a result. I think de Gaulle caused it to happen. But they don't explain it to you that way. They just explain it as a publisher and a writer gathering the evidence, so forth. But when you read it, you see this as an intelligence analysis. Don't you think so? Yeah, it's got to be. I've read too many case histories back in Washington that read just exactly like that. This is Harkness here, then. Willie doesn't know much about that yet. We've got 3 officers involved here. Do you know him? Do you know how to meet him? No, I didn't get to meet him. Moose says he's a real creep. He's all right. He's a nice guy, but you can see this information really doesn't come from him. I think that's what happened, Jim. You see, we were sort of violated their trust in a way with that New York Times story. I don't think that bothered them at all. But I think they sent us this freak who sells it as a book operation because they don't want to be tied to it. Yeah, but when you read the thing, you have real data about the police operations, and this is escorted out of the rationale by Dallas police. There's a real question whether those are regular Dallas police, though. This with the loafers can't be. I never saw policemen wear them. Have you got any doubt in your mind that Oswald went to Russia as an American agent? We've had some doubt about it, and we've spent a lot of time digging into that, bud. I'm kind of tired to give details for one thing. There is a real conflict in height. The Oswald who came back on the ship is about 5'6", and the Oswald who applied for a passport is 5'11". In other words, there's a real variation. Photograph that. How about the guy that died in Dallas? Well, that's the tall Oswald. What? All right, what are they going to say here? How about the guy that died in Dallas? Well, that's the tall Oswald. No, it's not. It's the short Oswald.
You ever feel that deep pull to the land, to know it, to build something that lasts, that itch for your own wild country? Well, it ain't just a daydream. In 2025, it matters more than ever. Whether you're a lifelong hunter or just starting out, dreaming of land to explore, to leave something real, or there is a trailhead where you can start. It's called land.com, the biggest online network for rural property. Find the right agent and explore everything from timber tracts to ranches. Get the tools you need to buy that dream generational property. Stop dreaming about it and head to land.com. It's your place to find your open space.
From coast to coast, unlock adventure at Red Lion Hotels by Sonesta, where restful sleep, friendly service, and local knowledge await. Whether for business or pleasure, spend less and make more of every trip. When you sign up for the Sonesta Travel Pass, you'll get their best rates instantly. Go to Sonesta.com to book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
I wonder if there may not be an explanation for his showing up trying to buy trucks for Cuba in 1961. He didn't. That was Kerry Thornley. We've considered the possibility that they might have a look-alike situation down there. Yeah, do you think? Duh. For example, you can go to the picture of Oswald in Russia standing beside Marina. She's very petite. Well, she's almost as short as he is. He's almost as short as she is. You remember those, Bill? Yeah. Standing on the bridge, he's almost as short as she is. And Lee Oswald was at least 5'10", so there's a mystery there. There's a mystery why she calls him, what's his name? Alec. As if Alec was the previous guy and she's forced to live with him because she certainly has no feeling for him. I think we've got 2 Oswalds. We've got the one that married her in Russia. I love it when outside sources other than Armstrong realize there's multiple Oswalds. Love it. I think we've got 2 Oswalds. We've got one that married her in Russia that seemed to have feelings for her. Remember, that first thing that happened when she got to Dallas is that she started having marital problems. Her husband beat her. She didn't like him. She started shifting from house to house, and she was happy enough, though, when she got back with Lee Harvey. I think there's a strong possibility of 2 Oswalds, both in Russia and later. No. In Russia, there was one. But not in the Marines. I'm inclined to doubt that it was the Marines. You got that one wrong. He has handwriting problems. For example, without being an expert, you can see that the letter is supposedly written by Lee Oswald in Russia. The handwriting is quite different than Lee Oswald, which is like chicken scratch. Wait a minute. You're all losing me somewhere here now. We've dug into that for many months. We're just getting back on that trail. There's something you can work a lifetime on and not really make much progress. Spend 2 minutes and just explain it to me. Boxley says, here's the explanation. If you read the notes that Oswald's supposed to have brought out of Russia, from which he was going to write a book, you'll find a beautiful example of an intelligence agent's casing report on the electronic factory in Minsk. Oswald did not write that, yet he's supposed to have written it. Now, the report would have many uses to intelligence, primarily being to infiltrate another agent into that plant. He'd be familiar with it. Now, nowhere else in his writings does Oswald get as specific as he does in the operations of the electronics plant in Minsk. It's totally different from all of his other writings. He can't spell cat if he's writing a note to somebody, but the casing report on the factory is very grammatically correct. Guys in the research chat, if somebody could dig up this Oswald's electronic report of the factory, I'd really appreciate it. But tell me who you think went to Russia, the ex-Marine? I don't think so. Who do you think went? I think the CIA agent went to Russia using Oswald's name. And what happened to the regular Oswald during this time? I got a hunch that he went to Florida or possibly Cuba. New Orleans. I think he was CIA man, and I think that could account for his being seen all over Miami. You know, we got all these reports at the time about his being seen down there. Okay, let me clarify this because there's no evidence for this at all. But who was it that was an Oswald lookalike who was working at the book depository as Oswald, who was living in Miami? William Seymour. Duh, right? This is Police Work 101, ladies and gentlemen. So what you think the guy who was killed in Dallas did not go to Russia? I think so. I'm understanding you correctly. Yeah, this is theory. Photographic evidence, you know. I know, but everything keeps popping up, so I'm trying to keep straight in my mind what your theory is. It's a possibility. I think you have to say, but a real possibility. There is a real question about the photographs, about Oswald in Russia is definitely small. There's no getting away from that. Shorter and stockier. Priscilla Johnson, God damn it. Did she say he was small? Priscilla Johnson, despite the fact I'm very good friends of her brothers, will not even give me the courtesy of spending an evening and chatting. That's because she knew it wasn't the real Oswald over there. She saw him. That's a good point. Also, she's writing Marina's memoirs, and by God, Marina must have told her something. There's a case that Bill says no action means something. I'll tell you something, I can crack Priscilla Johnson. What did you have in mind? I have in mind facing her with the fact that if she does not talk with me and tell me about this, and she's going to be pretty near Damatopoulos of being exposed as a bomb. It may be a great approach. She's probably CIA agent because UP is all over the place. I'm quite sure she is, but what I'm saying is I think I've got a way of forcing her to talk. Garrison says, but sheer reaction may be some value because as soon as you get a chance, look at our volumes tomorrow or Monday and look at the pictures of Alec, if you will, with Marina in Russia on the bridge. And if this man is an inch over 5'6", I'll stand on my head. She's about 5'2", and he's small. But Oswald in the Marines in applying for passport is tall, and there's something wrong. That's why Priscilla Johnson won't talk with me, and why Harper's won't publish that book. The minute Harper's publishes that book that's got any nub of truth in it at all, they'll blow this thing wide open. You realize that if this case, this could have been the rationale used to pin down the Chief Justice and all the people. This is pretty significant, what we just hit on now. This could be the thing that Johnson could use when he calls in the Chief Justice. Look, I'm going to have to tell you something. This could be the rationale. The area of exposure involving national security. There are two. There's an operation inside of Russia, and this would reveal it, and life is danger, and so forth. Boxley says, Marina's uncle is actually a CIA penetration into KG Beach. Boy, run through that one. You know, I'm a skeptic when it comes to, we're going on possibilities now. I understand that, but if you go through the possibilities, all right, her uncle is in military intelligence, KGB in Russia, is actually a CIA double agent. He stepped right into it. This is how we can get Marina out of Russia. Oswald couldn't have gotten her out of Russia. They are not going. Garrison says, remember, she's swinging from the beginning. As soon as she hits the States, she's with Carrie Thornley before Oswald is even dead. It's not just afterwards. She's going to the store with Thornley and more than Oswald. There we go. The confirmation, additional confirmation of the relationship between Thornley and Marina. They had her under her thumb ever since the assassination with Joe Grascoppi, who was Joe Poole's campaign manager in Dallas. He put some money for Porter to get his liquor store. He put up the money for her to buy a home. He's ridden herd on. Who is he? Porter is her new husband. No, but who's this other man? Grissop. He's a 2-bit, well, not a 2-bit, he's a 6-bit politician, a hood in Dallas. How do you spell his name? Boxley says Grassy, Grizaffi. He owns the liquor store where Marina's husband works. He owns it, and her husband is supposed to own it. Do we know where in Canada Porter flies? Yeah, he's flying to Calgary. He would make an overnight flight. Alberta has come up before. It's warm in Tulsa. That's Morton's story. The password is warm in Tulsa, oil employed by American Oil Company in Calgary. If you guys sit around here long enough tonight, you may solve this damn thing. We felt this guy couldn't take everything he said as truth, but you couldn't throw away everything. No, sometimes you forget and you throw the whole thing out. I think Priscilla Johnson McMillan may be our key to this thing. That's right, but she could blow the whole Duke. But I think we can also blow her as the world's biggest prostitute for sitting on what she's got. She wouldn't have any conscience. I know. She can also just be absolutely ruined for the rest of her life. I mean, nobody would ever believe a damn word she ever said from now on. She could be pictured as the real bum. She worked for Jack Kennedy. She interviewed Lee Harvey when he was there, and she's writing Marina's memoirs. Now, if Jack Kennedy was murdered by a whole bunch of people, and she's the one who's sitting on the truth, you may have a good point. There's got to be an approach to one of them, and this sounds good. And her husband's writing a book on James Earl Ray, which just kills me. Bradford Dewey. Boxley says if you could crack just one kink in this whole CIA story. Garrison says the next thing is about this husband-wife thing, that they can use the same evidence. The pictures deserve examination, but also when we are there at the office, I'll show you the difference in handwriting. And there's another thing too. There's some letters which come to mind that I have spent a lot of time over, written by Marina in Dallas speaking about Alec. And one of the letters actually has in it a reference to Lee. In other words, as if they are two different people. And also mentions Alec separately. Positively, I remember showing you that. And during the testimony, she says that she calls Lee Alec, but there is one case which she refers to Lee and Alec separately. That's where, that's interesting. That's where they got his 8-ball Heidel. Well, like Nigel says, he uses Alex Heidel in Mexico. So he had to start with Alex something. Alec was the name of the other guy in Russia, or when they put her with Lee Harvey back there. Well, then the second Oswald pulling all these tableaus and running to Mexico and back and forth is the real Alec. That's the guy she married in Russia. It sounds crazy. They were both back here in 62 and 63. Well, that accounts for your second Oswald. They must be lookalikes or they wouldn't have tried it in the first place. The grocery store, the driving range refers to... She has American friends in Moscow. She tells Marilyn Moret out here, redacted, that her American friends got her Lucky Strike cigarettes in Russia. Who were her American friends? And previous to this, he couldn't speak English at all, and then just out of the blue. This is the biggest giveaway. She couldn't speak 3 words of English in a row visiting over here at the Morets down here in summer of 63. Me like, me no like was the extent of her vocabulary. But out here at the lake... in late summer, she explained with perfect grammar that I used to smoke in Russia, but Lee doesn't like for me to smoke here. As a matter of fact, some of my American friends in Russia used to get me Lucky Strikes. Where does that come from? The evidence? In evidence, Marilyn says it in her testimony to Liebler. She says it later, just recently, to Mark Lane to back it up. Her brother, John Murat, is in his testimony in court and says that one striking thing was Marina on television after the assassination. He was completely floored at how well she had mastered the English language in the 3 months since she had left down there. Let me ask a question. If Priscilla Johnson knows about the 2 Oswalds, doesn't Liebler? I think Liebler is probably one of the key people in this thing. No, but Liebler is close to cracking than anybody else right now. I don't know if he is or not. I think so. Liebler has gotten a bum deal out of this whole thing. What do you mean? That he could have been used to crack her, or that he's trying to crack it on his own? No, he could be used to crack it. Blackmail hit him the same way as you could Priscilla, saying, by God, we know that you know there were 2 Oswalds, and yet you still, for this, if you want to save your skin, you be a hero and turn around and give us the true statement of it.
You ever feel that deep pull to the land, to know it, to build something that lasts, that itch for your own wild country? Well, it ain't just a daydream. In 2025, it matters more than ever. Whether you're a lifelong hunter or just starting out, Dreaming of land to explore, to leave something real? Or there is a trailhead where you can start. It's called land.com, the biggest online network for rural property. Find the right agent and explore everything from timber tracts to ranches. Get the tools you need to buy that dream generational property. Stop dreaming about it and head to land.com. It's your place to find your open space.
Find home wherever you roam at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites. Stretch out and enjoy home-like amenities for however long you need. And when you're a Sonesta Travel Pass member, staying at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites means earning points toward free nights, upgrades, and more. Go to Sonesta.com and book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
He's been so active through the spokesman for the Warren Commission. Not lately, he hasn't. Really. He was going strong and then just cut it out. Maybe that's when he had Harold to work on. You think that he actually knew that there were two guys? If Priscilla knew, it seems to me that he would know too. Priscilla might not know it. Priscilla might have put it together, the changes in height. Why then would she know that there were a different Oswald who is put on the boat? If Priscilla interviewed a guy in Moscow who was somewhere under 5'5", and then the guy gets shot in Dallas is 5'10". Actually, he's 5'9" in Dallas, not 5'10". If she's any sort of goddamn reporter at all, plus the fact that she spent 2 years with Marina Oswald. In that 2 years, Marina must have told her, why aren't they publishing Marina's memoirs? I think for the very reason that if they publish it, it blows the whole case open. Why does Harper's care? Well, my God, if the U.S. government can pressure the Chief Justice of the U.S., they can get Willie Morris. Harper's is easy to handle. I'll tell you something else that raises some questions in this regard, Bud, that you might want to think about. They are unable to satisfactorily handle the trip to Mexico. There's something wrong. He came back by automobile. Well, the going down is a problem too. Remember, the going down, there's no real data. Now, when they try to get the data and this questioning of one of the Mexican custodians, he reams of data of the border crossings. He doesn't have any left and says, what happened to it? And he said, well, 2 American investigators came by. I think they had a transit list of who was on the bus or something, and they asked for a copy. And when I gave them the second copy, they said they looked for the first copy, and then they said they would rather have that, and they ended up taking both of them. In other words, there was not any data of any kind left. There was something wrong with the trip to Mexico. There are no pictures. Why aren't there any pictures in Mexico? There's nothing. No explanation of the activity in Mexico. Does he spend 5 days sightseeing? He doesn't go sightseeing. He's going to bullfights. They are every day now in Mexico instead of just on Sunday. There's something wrong with the whole Mexican trip. I'll tell you something you probably don't know about the Mexican trip, and this I got from your friend Lipton out in California, I believe, but I'm not sure. A document that showed that a cropped photo was taken on October 4th. Paul Hoke out there. Was it a joke? This is a sworn affidavit from Richard Helms on October 4th, according to the Warren Report. Lee Harvey was back in Texas. I knew the guy, they had the date wrong for sure, but I thought it was October 3rd. So October 3rd is when Oswald's supposed to have stayed at the YMCA in Dallas. But the 3rd through the 5th is also when Kerry Thornley is seen with Marina gallivanting through Alice, Texas. The sworn statement by Helm is said October 4th, but in any event, there's something phony about it. Garrison said, I don't think they had finished part of the structure. It's like building part of a house ahead of the other part. It's too complicated to keep it all straight. The only reason they could not have released the photo in Mexico is that it was not Oswald that they took the picture of. They weren't worried about who they took it with, but the fact that Garrison said, that's a good point. The trip itself is an embarrassment, but the supreme point of embarrassment is the so-called picture of Oswald. Why can't they produce the picture of Oswald? You would think the one thing they could produce would be a picture of Oswald in Mexico. They had pictures from everywhere else. Boxey said they are happy to associate. They are all over the place. So why can't you see one picture when it was just a matter of record that it was taken? Same reason you can't see Ray. Yeah, there's something wrong with the whole Mexican trip. Then you have these people like Epstein missing the point, saying, well, the picture was not taken at the Cuban embassy. It was taken at the Russian embassy. I don't care where it was taken. Where is the picture of Oswald? It was not of Oswald. It is unbelievable. This is the typical criticism of the critic. The point to where is the picture of Oswald. They had it. It's in their custody. Where is it? He apparently came back from Mexico with a man named Bennett from Miami, and nobody's checked out Bennett yet. Okay, I don't know anything about this Bennett person at all. or where this information is coming from. You see, this is why I'm convinced 90% of Garrison's files, if not more, are gone. We have like scant leftovers. We don't have the bulk of his files. Fuck. He arrested and interviewed Emilio Santana for 5 fucking days straight. Interrogated for 5 days straight. There is no record of that interview. He didn't come up on the bus? No, he did not come up on the bus. There used to be a Bennett in the oil business in Dallas. Bennett is an accountant who lives in Miami. At least that's what it says. He had been in Mexico for some time, and his exit visa or papers were outdated by 6 weeks. In other words, you know they ask how long you will be and say 2 weeks. And he was 6 weeks overdue, and he got in a big argument with the Mexican authorities, and I think he was the one that brought Lee Harvey back with him. There's absolutely no evidence that Lee Harvey came back by bus. He's not on the manifest anywhere. He's not cleared by the customs anywhere. If you can ever read away through volumes 24 and 26, they're all pretty grim. He did not come back by bus. They're all messed up. They have a hell of a time with that. They really do. But Bennett is a serious character. Nobody knows what Bennett was doing there. What was his first name? John Bennett. He lives at 10250 Haitian Drive, Miami, Florida. According to the Mexican authorities, Lee Harvey Oswald left Mexico traveling by auto with his ultimate destination, New Orleans. Now, this is in volume 24, page 613. All right. So remember, let me screenshot this. I'm going to have to pull this when I get done here. Volume 24, page 613. Saying that Oswald drove back in a car. The only guy who shows up, and everybody who's left that day by auto, it looks like he might be the one, is this guy who was stopped by the authorities because he'd been there 6 weeks too long and couldn't explain, and they came back, as I remember, by way of Juarez rather than El Paso. They're just across the river from each other. He came back the coast rather than Laredo. The coast route is Laredo, yeah. Which, by the way, the bus came back due north of Monterey. Right, I'm wrong. El Paso is over even further. El Paso has nothing to do with it, I'm sorry. Brownsville, and I've forgotten what the hell the little town is, though. Bennett apparently exited there with his automobile. Matamoros? Matamoros, and I believe that Lee Harvey was with him because there's no indication anywhere that he came back by bus. Well, is there any indication that he was with Bennett? No, the only indication was that he was traveling by automobile when he exited, and they have a whole long list of people who exited that day. You mean if he did go to Mexico? But they did have too much difficulty. Somebody went to Mexico as Oswald. Somebody had to come back. It's like wrestling with a serpent. The Mexican trip is entirely too complicated and complex. It shouldn't be this much of a problem. Before I forget about it, it pops into my mind that I just brought up that because that's not unrelated to the problem of Russia too. There's some things wrong there. This is a structure which doesn't ring true in places, but one interesting thing in the police reports apparently prepared for the DA's office is we seem to have gotten a copy used by the DA's office because it got occasional notes in it. Did you ever notice that? And on the page, on whose main page, they put Marina right away, and she ended up marrying for a while. No, the first guy she was living with? Martin? Jim Martin. They've got down on the police report of Jim Martin saying that Marina lived at the house with him, and down at the bottom of the page in handwriting, it's got a private line to the White House. And it's got his number for any calls from the White House. It's a Dallas number. Every now and then it has some comment written, apparently in preparation for the case. And that's down there. That's in the Texas case. Yeah, I found it in there. Speaking of pieces of information which you can't do much with, Jim Martin had a private line with the White House. I think that there's a situation there in which, for a few weeks after the assassination, there was a great deal of tension about Marina and the control factor. Small wonder. That doesn't mean that Johnson might call, but I think there was somebody there who would call regular to see. Somebody who would have answered the phone. You can imagine there are control problems in the weeks to follow. That gives the White House, at least indirectly, control over her ever since the assassination, because Grassy was Joe Poole's boy and Joe Poole was Lyndon's boy. There was no two ways about it. Well, Marina made out rather well. She's done very well. There's no question about that. Also, Mrs. Tippett made out rather well. Do you know where the $780,000 came from? They took care of the widows. But yeah, where did the money come from? From contributions, they tell you. In the testimony of Marina's contribution, they're going through, now here's a contribution for $25,000. And a member of the Warren Commission says, where did that money come from? And an answer was a source. That's all. And they went on to the next question. There's this guy on the bus, Albert Osmer. When J.H. Boeing was listed as entering Mexico on a 180-day tourist permit issued at the time of crossing, he got his tourist permit all of a sudden, right? He got his initial papers in Montreal 72 hours before getting back to Ray again. 72 hours before he crossed the border, he got his personal papers in Montreal. You mean a vaccination permit? You may be wrong about that. Now, the descriptive data furnished by Boeing was sketchy. Mode of travel not indicated. Final destination given as DF, described as male American citizen. 60 years of age, married, office worker, born Houston, Texas, residence. Houston, Texas with no street address indicated. Presented birth certificate as proof of citizenship. As it later turns out, he was a native of Great Britain and a Canadian citizen. Now here's a guy, he takes out a 180-day tourist permit, yet he only stays a few days. Bill, I think the most significant thing of all, and if I'm not mistaken about this, is that he left from Montreal 72 hours before. It just clicked. I'd forgotten about this for months. We ought to put down a list of the ways that Montreal comes into this thing again and again, where Bloomfield is. That's where Bloomfield is. You see how close these guys came to getting it all? Well, guys, that's going to do it for me today. I'm going to wrap things up, and we will be back on, well, let me see. I'm going to see Fish the next couple days, so it's probably going to be back on Monday. And that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you. I'll see you then.
You ever feel that deep pull to the land, to know it, to build something that lasts, that itch for your own wild country? Well, it ain't just a daydream. In 2025, it matters more than ever. Whether you're a lifelong hunter or just starting out, dreaming of land to explore, to leave something real, or there is a trailhead where you can start. It's called land.com, the biggest online network for rural property. Find the right agent and explore everything from timber tracts to ranches. Get the tools you need to buy that dream generational property. Stop dreaming about it and head to land.com. It's your place to find your open space.
Find home wherever you roam at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites. Stretch out and enjoy home-like amenities for however long you need. And when you're a Sonesta Travel Pass member, staying at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites means earning points toward free nights, upgrades, and more. Go to Sonesta.com and book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.